some portions of the Bible are irredeemable, including today's text from Judges. Because of the purposes of this series, because that purpose is to show that God's desire is for the full inclusion of women, for all humans actually, and does not support what American patriarchal Christianity, in a majority, not totally, has done. And because I am here with you and not behind the pulpit under the guise of elders and congregation and money, we're going to take a stark look at the text. We're not going to back away from the pain, and we're not going to explain it away. Instead, we're going to take an honest look through the lens of the unnamed daughter and the unnamed women in her life, rather than through the lens of the father. Oh, and we're also not going to use the father's name. If she is not named, then I will not name him. His name is used all of the time, and so today it will not be. So even if you did read today's text before jumping on to the video, I encourage you to go back to the text now, hit pause if you want, or come back and attempt to reread it from her perspective. Put her at the center. Put aside the battles and the atrocities and everything happening, and think about her. She is an only child, living with her parents, close to marrying age, helping her household stay the way it needs to be while her father is away in battle. She is loyal. She is helping to manage the home. She is also a friend. Women then were much better about banding together. She's unmarried and she is a virgin. This is what we are told about her. The word of victory reaches the daughter before the father returns, and so she prepares to greet him, as was the custom of the time, with music and celebration, because she is faithful to the customs and laws of her faith. Unfortunately, the word that doesn't reach her until he arrives is the deal her father struck with God. Because make no mistake, you can use the word vow, but it is a deal. The other piece to consider, though, is that nowhere in this text, I read it a few times, does God strike up the deal. Does God even respond to what the father puts forth? The father instead takes his victory as God's affirmative, and therefore believes he needs to follow through on the terms that he himself established. He established them. I cannot tell you or begin to imagine why God did not intervene for her. I can't. Others have wondered that same thing, and some compared to the story of Isaac and how God did intervene for Isaac and not for her. But again, God did not enter the father's conversation. For Abraham and Isaac, God was there from beginning to end, very involved. I think the start of it matters. In short, the father makes what is named as a vow to offer as a burnt sacrifice to the Lord whoever or whatever, the Hebrew is a bit ambiguous there, first greets him upon return. The bit of grace, the very little bit of grace that I will give the father is this. It was more common, I have learned, for an animal to be the first out of the home because of where they dwelled on the property. So animal sacrifices, very commonplace in this time, right? So It is possible, I'm willing to say, that the father was expecting maybe one of his choicest animals that he was not yet ready to part with to greet him. And so to him, that was going to be his offering, that he was willing to sacrifice that ahead of when he had planned. I don't know. Or lose the food source, possibly. So I'll give him that little bit of grace. So then she sees her father in the distance. She grabs her tambourine-esque instrument and dances out to greet him. She is filled with joy and gratitude for the victory that he helped secure in leading the battle. Until she sees the look on his face and hears the words he speaks. She knows the meaning of those words without him having to be explicit. Another indication of her own faithfulness to her own and communal relationship with God. The father's words are harsh and misleading, indicating to her that God is at the root of this tragedy rather than his own lack of trust in God's presence in battle that resulted in him making the vow. Rather than taking responsibility, rather than asking God for release from the vow, the father puts all the blame on her. If you wouldn't have rushed out here, I wouldn't be in this predicament. At minimum, that's manipulative. And at a maximum, it indicates a tendency towards, at minimum, emotional abuse. It is important, I think, to note the generational trauma present here as well. You see, if you go back to the start of Judges 11, you see that the father is the child of a prostitute who was cast out by his half-siblings who resented him or were jealous of him. Kind of harkens back to Joseph, right? And his brothers in Genesis. Only when the community has need of his skills as a military leader is he sought and asked to return to the fold after years of having been pushed away. There's trauma there. But look at the daughter's response. I personally find it quite sad. Rather than fighting it, rather than making her own case before God, she asks only for time to sit and lament with her friends. 2 months to go off and grieve all the experiences she's never going to have but very likely dreamed of. Love, a home of her own, children, the potential of carrying on the father's line, which of course would have been an expectation of hers as an only child. I can't help but wonder if she had known that her father initiated and instigated this whole thing, that God had not said, do this and then I will do that. If her response would have changed, if she would have fought a little harder. So the father says, yes, go. Take your 2 months. She does. And when she returns, she dies. The text itself is gentle, right? It says the father carried out the vow he made, and that is about as gentle a spin as you can put on what happened, on how she died. I understand it. I do. I understand why we have to be gentle, but sometimes we need to face the ugliness that we encounter, because to do so honors the daughter. To steer away from it is dishonoring to her. The Hebrew people, they honored her. At least at the time of the writing of the book of Judges, it was the case that every year the Israelite women went off for 4 days to lament the daughter, to remember her, to honor what she endured. Here's a lingering question I have. Where's your mother? She is entirely absent from the entire chapter 11 in Judges. She's not there. Not just unnamed as the daughter is, but like absent. We know nothing of her. Personally, I hope that she died before having to witness her husband kill her only child. That is my hope for her. For generations, the practice of the Israelite women was to go out and lament for 4 days. It continued for generations. So, is it possible that Lois and Eunice themselves participated in the ritual? Could it be that part of the faith foundation referenced by the writer of 2 Timothy, maybe Paul, maybe not, that part of that faith foundation was a continuance of the lament and honor of this daughter? The mention of these two women, Lois and Eunice, is very brief, almost passing, but it is revealing. The writer of the letter recognizes that Timothy's faith foundation was poured by his grandmother and his mother. They were his teachers. They were the ones to teach and guide him through the transition from Judaism to following Christ and spreading Christ's message. Lois and Eunice were so prominent in Timothy's faith formation that the writer of this letter knows them by name, either from witnessing it himself or from Timothy's own report. It's a beautiful moment reflecting women instructing faith from generation to generation. From generational trauma to generational instruction, it can be easy to get caught up in what we don't know and what we don't understand. I think, though, we do a disservice to Lois, Eunice, and the daughter if we do not continue to shout from the rooftops the truth of how God sees and works through women. Women are called because women reflect the full image of God, period. Women are called because women are meant to be allowed to lament. Women are meant to be allowed to instruct and share the faith, forming the foundation upon which people find their own connection to God. Personally, I'll add that all created beings are called to speak up in the face of atrocity. Siblings, it is past time. Find your voice, trust your calling, and allow God's view, not religion's, to drive your beliefs. She is called, and she will keep speaking. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your faithfulness and commitment to this ride and to this message. I'm going to ask, as I always do, for you to like and share and comment, because each of those things, that's how we get this out there. That's how we expand from 40-ish people to hundreds. And when we get to hundreds, then we can grow and the message can continue to spread, because if we don't need a message of hope now, I think we just do. We just need a message of hope. And this is a message of hope. And the women need it today. So like, comment, share, encourage people, send an email, write a blog, link one of these videos, whichever one has been your favorite so far. Let's get this right out there. Let's get people in on the party with us. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week.